So as we are now at the summer break of the 2025 Formula 1 season, it is time now to reflect on what we have seen in 2025 on the driver's side by looking at the drivers' performances. We've seen some great performances this season from some of the absolute elite drivers and quite a few surprising great performances through the year, and even some surprisingly poor performances in 2025. But what we're going to be doing in this video is ranking the drivers based on what they have done so far this season. Before I go any further, make sure to smash the like button on this video, but most importantly, make sure to post in the comments section below what your driver rankings are for 2025. Even if you only give me your top 10, that's fine. I personally, in this video, am going to do the whole field in terms of every driver that has raced in 2025, from 21st all the way to 1st. And of course, with each driver, I will give my reasons as to why I've got them ranked in a certain position. So I will be spending probably 2 to 3 minutes at least on each driver. So this is going to be, quite a long video. But let's start at the very back, and the final 2 positions in the driver rankings is very easy to rank. At 21st, I've got Franco Colapinto, and then just ahead of him, in 20th, Jack Doohan. These two have been easily the 2 worst drivers in the field in 2025. We'll start with Colapinto, who replaced Doohan at Alpine, and even though I think Colapinto, in terms of pure pace, has shown more potential than what Doohan did in the races he did in the first, 5 or 6 races of 2025. Colapinto has done a lot of crashing and has, in general, driven, I think, mostly quite poorly in the races that he has done. Doohan was lacking quite a bit of speed compared to Gasly, but even though he did have that really stupid crash at Suzuka, he wasn't doing that quite as often and as stupidly as what Colapinto has done. So the final 2 positions here of 21st and 20th, again, it's pretty easy. Colapinto and Doohan, they've both been, not good whatsoever. Colapinto, he has maybe he's going to be in the rest of the car for the rest of 2025, but whether he is or not, it doesn't really matter, because I think he's been terrible, and I don't think he really will get any better as the season goes on. In 19th place, I am going Yuki Tsunoda, who of course is now at Red Bull, started the year with Racing Bulls. And I'll be honest, I don't really like putting Tsunoda in 19th place because he has been put in a difficult situation in 2025. He obviously did the first 2 race weekends of the year as a Racing Bulls driver, and in those first 2 races, I thought he did pretty well. Remember, 5th he was in qualifying in the first Grand Prix in Melbourne, and was probably going to finish in a really high point scoring position had it not been for a strategy error, I believe it was, towards the end of that Australian Grand Prix. Then in Shanghai, it again was another strategy error from the team, and that really cost Tsunoda from having a pretty good start in those first 2 races. Then replaced Liam Lawson at Red Bull, and except for maybe a couple weekends, he has been absolutely terrible in that car. Yes, that Red Bull car is difficult to drive. There is no doubt about it. I'm not expecting Tsunoda to be finishing in the top 6 every Grand Prix, but he should not be getting knocked out in Q1. He should not be finishing last of all the runners, which he's done a couple times. That should not be possible in that Red Bull car. He should still be scoring the odd point here and there at worst. Not scoring points in this Red Bull car still for me is not good enough. Even though, yes, it is poor, this Red Bull car. Even in the second Red Bull, I still think scoring points is very much doable. It's not quite that level of bad. But Tsunoda has continued to disappoint. He hasn't got to grips with the car, and he is still incredibly slow compared to Max Verstappen. Again, I will admit he has been put in a difficult position because the second seat at Red Bull is cursed at this point. But at the end of the day, he hasn't performed. And you have to remember, we criticised Sergio Perez a lot last year for similar performances. So we can't sit here and be kind to Tsunoda for doing the same thing, basically. The Red Bull car of last year fundamentally was a lot better than this year's car, but you cannot shy away from what's been a really terrible season from Tsunoda. Hopefully, it can get better in the future, but yeah, Tsunoda, I don't really see him doing really much of anything for the rest of the season. And just ahead of him in 18th, the driver he replaced at Red Bull, Liam Lawson. Those first two races, Lawson was incredibly far off the pace. Even though the Red Bull, again, was still not great to drive, it was incredible just how far off the pace he was, and terrible he was in Melbourne and Shanghai, and got dropped very quickly. And looking back, it was the right decision, because even going into the Racing Bulls car, he has not shown why really he should maybe go back to Red Bull. He has been consistently beaten by Isack Hadjar. He has had a couple races where he's done, I would say, well enough. Obviously, the Austrian Grand Prix where he qualified and finished in 6th, that was a brilliant weekend. The Monaco Grand Prix as well, full credit to him, but he has been consistently way too slow compared to Hadjar, who has had a good debut season, but let's be honest, Isack Hadjar is not one of the top few drivers on the grid, so there's no reason for Lawson to be out-qualified so regular and be, quite a bit off the pace of Hadjar. There's just no reason for that. Lawson has been absolutely terrible, I think, most of the time. Again, there's been a couple weekends where he's been good, but most of the time, compared to what we know he can do, he has been terrible, and he must step it up, because there is definitely a good chance that Red Bull will decide to get rid of him for 2026 and put someone different into that Racing Bulls car, because if he continues to be, regularly beaten by Hadjar in a comfortable fashion, then they're not losing anything by replacing him with an F2 driver that they might have, such as Arvin Lindblad, who's a driver they've got in their system who will probably be in Formula 1 in the next maybe year or two. So Lawson has got to step it up. If he wants to be on the grid full time going forward, this second half of the season is crucial for his Formula 1 career. In 17th place, Lance Stroll. Now, even though in the championship he's in a decent position, considering how quick the Aston Martin car has been this year, I'm still not really that impressed by what Stroll has done this year. He's been beaten by Alonso, hands down, yet again. He's been absolutely smashed by Fernando, and not just in terms of being out-qualified all the time, but if you look at the lap time difference between Fernando and Lance in qualifying, it's embarrassing from Lance. Fernando is obviously a great driver, but he's not the best qualifier on the grid. This is not Ayrton Senna over a single lap. So for Lance to be this far off is diabolical, quite frankly, especially considering we know he can do a bit better than this. Stroll, 17th for me, still having exactly the season that I said in the video I made on him about a year and a half ago that he will continue to have going forward every season, because this is who he is. He is going to be rubbish most of the time. Occasionally, like what happened at Silverstone, he will have a really great race and look like the second coming of Ayrton Senna, but then most of the time he will be massively off the pace, knocked out in Q1 regularly, and be just useless, quite frankly, in that second Aston Martin. So yeah, Stroll, for me, 17th. In 16th, the driver that many of us expected to be one of the big point scorers or regular point scorers in 2025, Carlos Sainz, a driver that has been quite arguably the most disappointing driver of 2025, especially when you consider how good the Williams has been. It's been able to score points at almost every Grand Prix so far. And if you look at the year he came off of 2024, where he had arguably the best season of his career, taking 2 race wins, being consistently, I wouldn't say great, but I thought he did the best season pretty much he could have done in that Ferrari car. Again, hopes were high for Sainz coming into that Williams, which we knew immediately from pre-season testing was one of, if not the best midfield car. But Sainz has been pretty bad considering what we know he's capable of. He's been comfortably beaten by Albon. Yeah, he's had some bad luck in some races, but most of the time he just hasn't had the performance that really he should have. I don't know what's going wrong. I don't know why he's still not getting used to things, given how good of a driver we know he can be. And he has got to improve in the second half of this year, because if he continues to have a year at this level, continues the year at this level, especially compared to Alex Albon, a driver that we thought, even though he's been, decent in the last couple of years, we thought Sainz would come in and be better than Albon. For him to be comfortably beaten by Albon really does hurt Carlos's stock, especially going forward if Sainz wants to maybe move from Williams to another team, an Audi or even a Red Bull if Max Verstappen leaves Red Bull in the next year or so. So for his own stock and confidence, he has got to step it up in the second half of 2025. If he does, great, but he has been, again, very disappointing for me this season, and I really hope he can step it up, because we know he can do a lot better than this. He was definitely not as good as Leclerc at Ferrari, but he was not miles off the pace. There was plenty of times where he was pretty much on the pace of Leclerc. So for him to be performing like this, pace-wise, compared to Albon, is simply not good enough. And just ahead of him in 15th is a Ferrari Academy driver, Oliver Bearman, who of course has made his full debut in 2025. Bearman has been a bit hot and cold. He has been a bit crashy, I would say at times. A bit erratic, maybe you could argue. But when he has delivered, I think Bearman has been really, really good. His points finish, for example, at Suzuka was really, really good, around a circuit that really the drivers do tend to show just how great they are. He did have a really good qualifying at Silverstone. Couple other weekends as well where I thought he was doing well, but again, he's been a bit too hot and cold. There's been weekends where he's been pretty slow and just a bit too far off the pace compared to his teammate, and then there's been other weekends where he's been right on it. So yeah, just needing that consistency really, and needs to stop crashing as much, and also committing red flag infringements. That would help as well. But yeah, Bearman definitely has got the potential if he can find consistency, but that's really why I've got him ranked down in 15th, because he just hasn't had the consistency that, say, Ocon has, and obviously is quite low down in the championship compared to teammate Ocon in a Haas car that regularly qualifies quite low down, but is very good in the race. But it's normally Ocon who's benefiting from that. So yeah, Bearman can definitely improve in the second half of the year, even going into next season. There's definitely, I think, more to come from Oliver Bearman, especially considering we have to remember he is only 20 years old. So yeah, he is quite young, and again, I think there is more to come from the young Brit. In 14th, the Formula 2 champion of last year, Gabriel Bortoleto. This may be a surprise to some watching this video that I've got Bortoleto as high as I do. But the reason I do is because I have been quietly impressed by what I've seen from Bortoleto. Mainly because of his qualifying efforts, out-qualifying Nico Hulkenberg over the course of 2025 so far. A Hulkenberg that has been obviously really good in the races, and that's really only the only area where Bortoleto is not quite doing as well in is the races. I don't know if it's because Bortoleto hasn't figured out how to manage the tyres effectively, or maybe just isn't as good of a race driver as he is a qualifying driver. We'll have to find out more about him as time goes on, but I have been very impressed by his pace. The pace is there, fundamentally. It's just putting it together on a race day. We saw him do it in Austria, him put it together, and he looked pretty good. But obviously that's only been one race. We need to see that on a more consistent basis. But Bortoleto, definitely in terms of speed and potential, it's there. We just need to see him really improve on a consistent basis in the races. So yeah, keep your eye on Bortoleto, because if he can improve on a Sunday, then, you know, if the Sauber keeps improving like it is, I don't see why Bortoleto can't get maybe 2 or 3 more points finishes, given how well Hulkenberg is doing in the same car. Because again, Bortoleto in qualifying is the superior driver so far. In 13th place, Pierre Gasly for Alpine. Now, Gasly has had quite a few good races this year. Bahrain was a really good one at the start of the season. He had a really good one at Silverstone, finishing 6th in very difficult conditions. Has had some really good qualifying sessions, but in the races hasn't always been that great. I think he's done mostly the best he can with what is an inconsistent Alpine car. The reason, though, I've got Gasly ranked 13th is because he hasn't had really any representative reference as a teammate, because Doohan and Colapinto are not Formula 1 level drivers. They're just not. So we don't know if Gasly truly is doing that great this season, or whether if you would have put a Hulkenberg or an Ocon level driver in there, whether Gasly would be quite a bit worse. So that's the only reason I've got Gasly 13th, is because him not having a good representation of a teammate is hurting his stock. But yeah, he's not having a bad season. I think, again, mostly he's doing the best he can from what I can see. But it would be nice if he had a better teammate so we could see truly just how well he's doing. That helped, obviously, when his teammate was Ocon. We could get a better understanding of how good he was doing. And he was doing, I thought, pretty well in 2023 and 2024 compared to Esteban. So, yeah, Gasly doing decently. We'll see what the rest of his season is like for Alpine. And just ahead of him is the young Frenchman, Isack Hadjar, a driver that has impressed me a lot and surprised me a lot. I thought this guy would be rarely scoring points and would be very mediocre. I was thinking, what we saw from, say, Brendan Hartley a few years ago. I thought that was what we were going to get with Hadjar. Hartley was obviously not good enough for Formula 1, but he wasn't, crashing all the time, but he was just mediocre and just not quick enough. That's, again, what I thought Hadjar would be. But again, he has surprised me quite a lot. He's made Q3 a lot in what is, yes, a good Racing Bulls car. We cannot deny that. But still, he has delivered a lot in qualifying and has had quite a few good points finishes as well. So, yeah, Hadjar's had a good season, no doubt about it. But only reason I have got him in 12th and maybe not a couple positions higher is because in terms of his teammate, Liam Lawson has, I think, been pretty poor this season, and I don't think Lawson has been at his best, which has kind of hurt Hadjar's stock in terms of how he's done so far, because if Lawson was, I think, at his best and Hadjar was still doing what he was doing, I think that would really help Isaac's stock. But also, Isack just in general hasn't had, I think, as great of a teammate reference compared to others in the midfield. But also, we cannot forget that the Racing Bulls car has been one of the best cars in the midfield. So that's why Hadjar has, been sometimes in good positions. But again, he has impressed me and surprised me. But yeah, 12th is high as I'm going to go. I hope to keep seeing some more Q3 appearances and points finishes, because he could be, for quite a few years, a mainstay on the grid if he keeps up what we are seeing. And just outside of the top 10, in 11th place, a driver that might surprise people that I've gone with this driver in 11th and maybe not a few positions higher, Nico Hulkenberg, who in the final few races before the summer break has been really, really good. But even though he has, I'd admit, he's been brilliant and obviously got the podium at Silverstone, finally getting a podium in Formula 1. Great to see him finally achieve that. The only reason I've got him in 11th and not in the top 10 is pretty much because Bortoleto, his teammate, has been better in qualifying. And I think because Bortoleto is decent but clearly not one of the top 10 on the grid, I think that does slightly hurt the season that Hulkenberg has had so far in terms of how I at least view him. In the races, yeah, he's been very good. Even though the Sauber car has definitely improved quite a bit, he has been very good in the races. I cannot deny that. You know, finishing in third after starting 19th, that's incredible. Obviously, in Austria, he did it as well, coming from low down into the points. But Bortoleto having the better qualifying head-to-head just slightly hurts how I view his season. If he was comfortably beating Bortoleto in qualifying as well, I probably would have had him in the top 10. So, yeah, that's the only thing hurting there for Hulkenberg. So, if he can get ahead of Bortoleto in the head-to-head in qualifying and keeps up scoring points the way he is, I probably will have him in my top 10 at the end of the season. But for now, just outside. And just inside of the top 10, in 10th place, a driver that really hopes to be winning his first World Championship this year, Lando Norris. And I could have ranked him even lower. Some may say that I should have ranked him lower, say, than Hulkenberg and Hadjar and even Gasly. But 10th is as low as I can go. I have been incredibly disappointed with Lando Norris this season. Even though he still has a pretty decent chance of winning the championship, he has left so many points on the table through silly mistakes, bottling it under pressure in certain qualifying sessions when we know at his best that he should be out-qualifying Piastri. Just not good enough as far as I'm concerned. And I would be still surprised if Lando, won the championship because of just the skill and what he has shown us this year. I just don't see his season that he's done so far as being a World Championship winning year. It would be quite a poor World Championship winning season if he was to win it, because he has been in quite a few race weekends just not good enough as far as I'm concerned. Again, the mistakes have been really poor. Obviously the ones in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the one in Canada, and the qualifying session he had there was diabolically bad. So yeah, 10th is where I would have to go with him. He is only a championship contender because of that car. If he was in a Mercedes or a Ferrari, he would be not even in the top 5 of the championship. Absolutely no way. When with his teammate Piastri, if Piastri was in a Mercedes or a Ferrari, I'm not sure you can necessarily say the same thing, because even though Oscar is not the quickest of drivers compared to, say, Verstappen, Russell, Leclerc at times, Oscar is a lot more consistent, and especially in a race situation, is just better skilled, I think, than Lando. But yeah, Lando's made so many poor mistakes and threw away, I think, so many great results he could have had, that yeah, 10th is where I've got to have him. If he does, if he provides a lot more consistency, let's say, in the second half of the year, and he does win the championship, of course I'll rank him higher, but there's no way If he wins the championship, there's no way I'm going to rank him as the best driver for the season. Absolutely no chance, because from what I've seen so far, this guy is nowhere near being the best driver in Formula 1. Absolutely nowhere near. He is not on the level of Max Verstappen, George Russell, Charles Leclerc. I'd have to say, in terms of pure skill, maybe not speed at the moment, Lewis Hamilton, and not as good as Piastri. I wouldn't say he's not on the same level as Piastri, but Oscar definitely, at his best, is better than Lando Norris. So, yeah, Norris, for me, in 10th place. And just ahead of him, a driver that was kicked out of Alpine at the end of last season, slightly early, Esteban Ocon, who I think has been absolutely brilliant this season. For a couple reasons. One, even though Haas have been at times, high up-ish in the Constructors' Championship, a lot of the time Haas have qualified low on the grid and Ocon has had to come flying through the field to score points. It's been quite rare that he has started in the top 10 when finishing in the points. So I think that is, something that has really allowed him to shine, in my view. Having to score points in the midfield. If you start in the top 10, it's obviously great if you can do that. But to score points when starting way outside of the top 10, it is so difficult to do that, especially in the midfield where it is so close and competitive. Yeah, Ocon has done it quite a few times and has had an absolutely brilliant time at doing it. And also, because I do rate Oliver Bearman quite a bit, him beating Bearman as comfortably overall in the race and qualifying as he has also helped my view of him this season. So yeah, Esteban Ocon, absolutely brilliant in 2025. Hope he keeps it up. He still is one of the best drivers in that midfield pack. He has been for years, and proving once again so far this year that he is still one of the best drivers to be had if you're a midfield team. And Haas are very lucky to have him, because after losing Hulkenberg, they needed a really good replacement in terms of an experienced, consistent head. And that's exactly what they found. Now, in 8th place, Kimi Antonelli. Maybe slightly too high, some may argue, but I think Antonelli, whilst he hasn't lit the world on fire in 2025, has been a bit unlucky at times in terms of, if you look at his points total, the reason he's a bit closer to the midfield is because he's lost out quite a few points from DNFs that weren't necessarily his fault. Obviously, the one in Austria was, but other ones, Imola, Spain, Silverstone, he never got to show really what he was, what he could have done in that race. So Antonelli, I think, has had, I wouldn't say a proper good season, but decent enough, considering the pace of the Mercedes and given how young he is. And I think we have to remember as well that his teammate, George Russell, is one of the best drivers on the grid. He is, as far as I'm concerned, Russell is a world championship level driver. As long as Russell has the car in the future to win a championship, he will. That's how good he is, in my view. So for Antonelli to come into his first year in F1 and have Russell as a teammate is really, really difficult. It does also show just how amazing Lewis Hamilton was in his debut season. To come in and beat the world champion at the time, Fernando Alonso. Again, the greatest debut season of all time. But from Antonelli, I think it's been a decent debut season. He's definitely not shown really, I think, at all his potential. He's obviously very young. He's got a long way to go, I think, until he really shows us what he can do at his best. But I think he's done enough to deserve being in 8th place. So yeah, Antonelli, decent start. I hope to see more going forward for the rest of the season, but I think it's been decent enough for 8th place. And just ahead of him, the driver that is the oldest by far on the grid, Fernando Alonso. This might be quite high of a ranking for some people, but Fernando, I think, has been really good this season. Hasn't had necessarily the best luck as well. There's been quite a few races where he could have scored points, but either the engine or the team let him down. Obviously, it wasn't a great start to the season of him crashing out the Australian Grand Prix, but since then, I think he has done the best with this Aston Martin car, and now has got to the point where he is regularly scoring points and getting into Q3, and not just getting into Q3, but getting good qualifying results out of this Aston Martin car. So Alonso, for me, goes in 7th. Alonso is still, for me, one of the top few drivers on the grid, and I think Alonso, probably by the end of the season, will be comfortably top 10 of the championship, maybe in 8th place. But Alonso, yeah, still for me has had a really great season, and I think will continue it as the season goes on, as the Aston Martin car is probably the best, or one of the best, in the midfield. So yeah, Fernando should keep the point scoring up. And in 6th place, his ex-teammate from 2007, Lewis Hamilton. And this is the absolute highest I could rank Lewis Hamilton for 2025. Even though Hamilton, as of late, has got better, got more used to the Ferrari car, he's got closer to Leclerc on performance, he still has not this season been good enough as far as I'm concerned. Leclerc has been clearly the better driver so far in terms of pace. Obviously, the head-to-heads in the race and qualifying is clearly in Leclerc's favour. And yeah, Hamilton has been quite disappointing a lot of the time in 2025. Yes, the car has not been most of the time good enough. It is now starting to get good, to be able to fight for wins and that. But Hamilton, I still think most of the time has not done quite the best that we know he can do. Silverstone was more so of the Hamilton that we really hoped to see this season. But yeah, 6th is the highest I could go with him. Obviously, I'm not going to put him ahead of Leclerc. But yeah, I really hope he, especially if he is even more comfortable in the Ferrari car going forward, I do hope he can keep improving in that Ferrari car, because we want to see Lewis back at his consistent best, but we have not seen that so far in 2025. And just ahead of him, Charles Leclerc, his teammate, in 5th. Leclerc has had, I would say, a good season, but not as good as last season, and definitely not his best season. Most of the time, he's done the best he can with this Ferrari car, which has been inconsistent. There has been the odd race where I think Leclerc could have done better. Obviously, Silverstone was the low point of his season so far in terms of his own driver performance. But I think Leclerc, again, most of the time, is done the best he can with this Ferrari car. The Ferrari car, if it was a race-winning level car at the start of the year, Leclerc would absolutely be a championship contender, but Ferrari have not helped him out again in 2025. But the car's looking better now, which is good to see. Hopefully Leclerc can get, 2 or 3 wins in the second half of the year. But 5th and 6th is, for the 2 Ferrari drivers, that's as high as I can go. Leclerc, again, he's been good, but definitely not the best version of him so far this year. Maybe, obviously, not helped by the Ferrari car having its issues, but still, it's your job as a driver to get around that and still perform at your best. Max Verstappen, for example, has done that brilliantly. So, yeah, 5th for the Monegasque. And very high up in 4th place, Alexander Albon. What a season this guy has had. And he has really proven, I think, pretty much all of us wrong as to how great he can be. Most of us thought Carlos Sainz would, I wouldn't say comfortably beat Albon, but be the better driver. But Albon has been really the one comfortably beating Sainz. He has so many times been in the points. He's had, over 2 top 5 finishes, and is not even points-wise that far away from a couple of the front-running team drivers. He has been consistently brilliant. I cannot fault him at all for the season he's had. He has been just amazing, quite frankly, in that car. The car, yes, has been good, but considering who his teammate is, and even though his teammate has been disappointing, still Albon had to perform, and he has. It's been absolutely brilliant to see Albon doing what he's been doing, and clearly Alexander Albon is quite a bit better of a driver now than he was when he was at Red Bull 5 years ago. That is obvious now to see, and you just have to say it because it's the truth. And one thing I will say is that he is doing wonders for his stock in terms of maybe racing for a Red Bull or a Ferrari or even a Mercedes in the future. Because if you can beat a driver like Carlos Sainz the way he is, that really is going to help how teams view him. And I think absolutely he will end up at a big team in the future. Whether he's the number one driver or not, who knows? But he will end up at a big team again in the next few years because he has been just so brilliant this season. And having a teammate in Carlos Sainz, and beating him the way he has been, really, again, just helps his stock. Hope it continues. Hope Albon can finish where he is in the championship and comfortably finish in the top 10. But yeah, what a season he has had. 4th in the whole driver ranking is absolutely deserved for Alexander Albon. Now on to the top 3, and starting in 3rd place, Oscar Piastri. A driver that has been the best version of himself that we've seen, in 2025. This is by far the best version of Piastri we've seen in Formula 1. We've seen shades of brilliance, obviously, in his first couple years. Some brilliant race wins, the odd brilliant qualifying session, but putting it all together consistently, especially ahead of his teammate Lando Norris, was the difficulty. But that's the thing he has really stepped up on and improved upon in 2025. That's why he's had so many race wins. And that's why I still think for the championship he's looking good and in a good position. He is my favourite for the Drivers' Championship. Not sure I'll have him ranked as the absolute best driver for 2025. If he does win the championship, depends how he finishes the season compared to others. But he has been very, very good, no doubt about that. And he absolutely deserves to be up in the top 3. And if he does win the championship this season, I think absolutely you'd have to consider him as not the best driver in Formula 1. I think it's pretty clear who that is. But he's got to be up in that top 5 at worst, Piastri, going forward if he does win the championship. And maybe even top 3. Given how consistently brilliant he's been. The overtakes have been brilliant. Again, the consistent qualifying pace, the brilliant race pace. It really has been a great season so far. And I think it will result in him taking his first World Championship and Australia's first Drivers' Championship for 45 years. Just ahead, though, in 2nd, Mercedes driver George Russell. Russell has continued the form we saw of last season. I had Russell, I think, in my end-of-season rankings for 2024, up in 2nd place as well. I thought last year he was amazing, just how great he was. And this season, he has only continued to build on that. Consistently in qualifying, he is a demon of a driver. Again, if only he had a quick enough car to be able to consistently fight for race wins. Because the speed absolutely is there. It's terrifying how quick he can be in a qualifying session. And you'd have to say, especially if you look at his race win in Canada, the race pace absolutely there as well. He really has put it all together, has Russell. And yeah, if only he had a fast enough car to fight for the championship, then he'd be, I think, probably the favourite, because he is definitely better than Piastri and Norris in terms of overall speed, talent, skill. It's just, again, the case of the car. If the car's good enough, he can do wonders. He can win multiple races and absolutely is going to win a world championship at some point. With how quick he is and how good he is at the minute. And the scary thing is I think he could get even a bit better. I just don't see how this guy doesn't win a championship. He's that good. So, yeah, Russell, really amazing season. He's absolutely smashed Antonelli, who obviously is a kid with a lot of potential. He's done brilliant in the head-to-heads compared to him. He's been pretty consistent in the season. In terms of the results where it's dropped off, that's mainly been because of the Mercedes car. You can't really blame it on him. Again, if only the car was consistently quick enough, he'd be right in there. But if he can, in this next era of Formula 1 in 2026, get a championship winning car, and he doesn't have Max Verstappen as a teammate, it could be game over for the rest of the field. But the absolute best driver of 2025, it has to be Max Verstappen. He's not going to win the 5th World Championship this year. This will be the first non-championship year for Verstappen since 2020. But he has been the best driver of 2025. There is no doubt about it. Some of the laps he has pulled off in qualifying have been out of this world, quite literally. Suzuka, I still don't know how he got pole and won that race. Silverstone, he took pole with a Monza-style setup. Again, how on earth is that possible? And as well, the win at Imola, the move he made at the start, the pace after that, just incredible what he has done. And consistently, he has been absolutely brilliant in a Red Bull car that is a dog to drive a lot of the time. And that's the only thing keeping him from properly fighting for the championship and, in my view, winning his 5th World Championship. So it's a shame for Verstappen, but he has been the absolute best driver this season. In terms of, though, comparing him to George Russell, in terms of pure speed, I think Max and George are pretty much at the same level. Russell has had some amazing laps himself. The pole lap in Canada, for example, was incredible from Russell. Putting on the front row in Shanghai and Bahrain as well from Russell was incredible. I think the only difference, really, between Max and George is that in terms of overtaking and racing skill, I think Max is just that slight bit better. But in terms of pure speed, these two are as close as I think any on the field or in the field. And I think, for years, ever since 2022, we've been saying that Charles Leclerc is the closest to Max Verstappen in terms of pure pace and skill. Leclerc's still very close, but I think he has been replaced now. I think we could say the closest driver to Max Verstappen in terms of pace and skill is George Russell. But again, that extra bit of skill when it comes to racing, I think that's what just about keeps Max ahead of a driver like George Russell. But here is the full list of my driver rankings, and that is, guys, it for my driver rankings video for the season so far. Of course, I will do this again at the end of the season, probably be one of the first videos I do once the end of season comes in December. So make sure in the comments section to let me know what are your driver rankings. Again, even if you only give me a top 5, that's good enough. I just really want to hear from you guys as to what your rankings are. And let me know what you thought of my rankings. Where do you agree, disagree? Just give me your thoughts in general as to the rankings I have given and what your rankings would be and the reasons as well why you've gone for certain drivers in certain positions. But guys, until my next video here in this summer break, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.